Good afternoon. My name is Amanda Ashley. I'm your host, and welcome to Afternoon Cocktail. Today, we have a great show lined up for you. I have Mr. Dan Gross from Music and Journalism here to poke his brilliant brain about some music and entertainment. And then I'm also welcoming Miss Sarah Eide. Are you guys here? Did you want to say hello? Sarah's going to be performing some of her original music today for you as well. Today's theme is transformation. Sarah, would you like to kick us off with one of your songs? Oh, I can't hear you. Sarah? There we go. Miss Sarah Eide, you are going to perform for us your original song, Pour Over Me, and this song can be found on her website at saraheide.com and all streaming services. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's Sarah Eide.
Ada, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I should tell people this ahead of time.
No, you did. I just felt.
But yeah, it's a new song I just released called Pour Over Me. And actually, there's a bunch of fantastic Rochester musicians who helped me with this song. So yeah, you can check it out on my website or any streaming services. Shall I go ahead and play?
Please.
All right.
Sarah Eide, take it away.
Me.
Miss Sarah Eide. Welcome to Rochester's music scene. Beautiful job. I love your music. I know I
Thanks.
told you this earlier, but I've been
Oh, you
listening
could
to
tell
you
me
for
again.
the past few days. Well, I mean, we're so lucky to have you. You're originally from Providence, Rhode Island. That's where you were born and raised. And then
Well,
you're
it's where
a
I grew up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So where were you born?
Well, I was born in Boston, but yeah, I lived there for like a year. And then when I was a year old, I moved to Providence, Rhode Island. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then you went back to Boston for your college degree. You're a Berklee College of Music graduate, correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lovely. And then you spent some time in Chicago. What great
Yes.
cities. You've been fortunate to live
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So, what brought you to Western New York? I mean, you spent some time in these, beautiful cities, and then you came out here. I mean, which is a small city, but I mean, you got a great city. Don't get me wrong. But what brought you here?
Actually, my music brought me here, to be honest. I want to say it was like a little over 2 years ago. I did a house show in Webster, because I was going to a songwriting, it wasn't like a conference. It was just me and a few friends getting together to do some songwriting together, like a retreat, I guess. I was doing a songwriting retreat in Western New York, in Ithaca, actually. And I was like, well, I should do a few shows like on my way, just try to get some shows. So I got a show in Webster, and I just felt very much inside of myself, this is where I should be. And I was looking, it's not like I just randomly decided to move. I had decided that it would be best to move out of Chicago because it's expensive in Chicago. And I love the Northeast because that's where I grew up, but I never thought I could afford anywhere in the Northeast. So I never really explored that option. And then I found out like, oh, Rochester is super affordable, and there's like so much musical talent here and just all kinds of artistic talent here. And so it just hit all the marks. So I just moved. I moved here like maybe 6 months later.
And how long have you actually been here?
I've been here for about 1.5 years now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, you've done a really great job of putting your mark on our scene already. Like I keep seeing your name pop up everywhere, and I know you've been doing so great with your live streams and your performances. So I mean, congratulations to you. I mean, you pretty much are self-propelled, correct?
Yes. That's a good way to put it. Yeah, I'm just constantly propelling myself.
Me too. Well, I mean, Boston and Chicago are pretty contrasty cities, and I mean, especially contrasted to Western New York. I mean, do you feel like those previous chapters in your life have had an influence on your sound and your writing?
Yeah, definitely. I think that so Providence, Rhode Island is actually like very similar to Rochester in a lot of ways. It's a small city. It's like it's very much a college town, and it has a very vibrant music scene. So that which by the way is another reason why I loved Rochester, because it reminded me of where I grew up. And ultimately, like that's kind of what I wanted, is a small city that had a great arts scene. So that influenced me for sure, because I think it just made me always feel like it's so, I don't know, just that sense of community is like incredibly important, and like physical closeness, not just like a virtual community, but like actually like being physically close to other artistic people. And then, going to Berklee, of course, like that had a huge influence on me in a lot of ways. Probably just being in a place where there's so much different kinds of music in one place. Like it really like opened up my mind, I guess, to types of music that I didn't think I would like, or I maybe gave it a try before, but then I was like, no, actually I really like this. And it just starts to seep into your writing. And then Chicago, I would say like for sure the blues. I mean, Chicago is absolutely 100% like it's a blues town. That's not just a stereotype. It's like legit. So I think that like very much impacted me. So yeah.
Very cool. I mean, have you ever been to New York City?
Yes, many times. Mm-hmm. Yep.
do you, I mean, so you've moved around a little bit. I mean, do you plan to plant your feet somewhere else? Like, do you plan to plant your feet in another city down the line? I mean, I'm sure you
Yeah.
miss parts of being in a big city.
Oh, right now I do not actually, to be honest. I don't miss it, but yeah, I mean, I do think about that just because my career is very important to me. And of course, like, I think that Rochester was a career move though, actually, because because I tour and I wanted to be in a place that's like makes touring affordable, and that there's still like lots of talent in the area. Like I can't live in like the middle of nowhere where there's no talent either, because then who's going to tour with me? So it was a strategic move career wise, but I could see myself potential like maybe moving to Nashville or maybe New York City. Like I've kind of thought about that. I think I would only do it if it really was like absolutely necessary for my career though, because to be honest, I 100% prefer a place like Providence, Rhode Island or Rochester, New York, because you get all the things that you can get in a city. Not maybe as much of it, but there's like less of it, but it's there. And then on top of that, it's so much more accessible. And I just value that so much, because as you know, I have kids. So things need to be easy for me, as easy as possible. Yeah.
Sure. I get that. You know, I'm from Long Island, so I mean, moving up here was very different. But I mean, for all the reasons that you've just mentioned, that's why I love it here and why I bought a house here and, don't plan on leaving anytime soon. But, I always say to people, like I really toyed with the idea. I spent a lot of time down south and going to Nashville and Memphis, and I toyed with the idea of moving there. And the affordability is huge, but also the fact that you could travel like 10 to 12 hours in any direction and really be in an amazing city. And for touring's sake, it kind of makes sense to live in a place like here and then just hit the road and make your mark and revisit those places like every so often. I found more
Oh yeah.
success doing that than just planting my feet, in a place like Nashville. Like Nashville's amazing, don't get me wrong, but so yeah, you just mentioned you're a mother. I mean, today's theme is transformation. I mean, I know speaking on my own behalf what being a mother has done to me. I mean, how has being a mother influenced your music or transformed your sound and your writing and your perception of life?
Yeah, it transformed it hugely. Yeah, I think, wow, that's like, yeah, it's a loaded question. All right.
Yeah,
I would
sorry, I'm
say
full of
if I
them.
have, no, it's good. If I had to put it in a nutshell, like, and it's not to say that people who aren't parents can't be like deep or write deep music, but my music is like so much more. I think that I feel it's so much more important that everything I put out has like integrity in every single way, including like the content, like the lyrical content. And that, I don't know, I guess like, and it's not just because like, oh, I'm an example to my children. It's actually because I just feel like every person, I feel this sense of like every person is so incredibly important now, and me making the most of my life and of my music, and not just like, oh, I just want to be famous or make money, but that I'm truly like expressing myself in my truest form and always trying to be a better version of myself every day if I can. I think that I feel that so much more intensely now that I have children. And I think that's made the quality of my work so much better personally.
Sure. I feel like it's just a part of evolving, like as a female, like having, when I had my son, I definitely look at life so differently now than I did. And I feel a sense of that as well, like in my writing, and what I decide, how I decide to present myself and push my career forward. Now, you've worked quite a bit with writing and composing music for TV shows and games. Like when you say games, like video games, or
So a few different kinds of games. Like I've only actually worked on 2 games so far. I'm very interested in expanding upon that. But so one game was actually like a computer game for kids. Like it's a game that you would actually like play on your computer. So
Cool.
not like a PlayStation or anything like that. And then the other game is actually like a game that it's like an app store game that you would like play on your phone, Android or Apple. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. And now, so how does your compositions differ for writing something for a game or a TV show or, for another purpose as opposed to
Yeah.
your own writing and that personal like touch to it? Do you have to put yourself in a different frame of mind? I mean,
Oh, yes.
I assume
Oh,
so.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for anyone interested in getting into this, I'm going to tell you the most important part of all of this. When you're writing for a game or for an advertisement or for a movie or any kind of media, it's not essentially your work. And it's not even collaborative truly. In some ways it could be, like if you're really lucky, but it's really a job. And it doesn't mean it's not creative and not fun and not super fulfilling and awesome, but essentially like the director or the developer of the game, they're in charge. They're determining what they want, and you will probably give them something at some point that they don't like, and you got to do it again. So yeah, it takes a very different frame of mind. And honestly, it was very challenging for me at first because it felt like I was being critiqued, but it's not. It's just, this isn't exactly what I wanted. Please try again. Yeah.
What a healthy challenge, though, to take on for yourself, like that. I mean, that just makes you apply yourself songwriting wise in a different way. And I think anybody, no matter what realm of business you're in, you want to take on those healthy challenges to make yourself stronger at your profession. So, I mean, kudos to you for doing that. It's great. I love it. So now, yesterday, you just released a video of your song collaboration, and your song was called New Point of View.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a collaborative effort, it seems like, with the Brothers Blue.
Yes.
And great, I love it. That song seems very different in comparison to like the song you just played and most
Yeah.
of the music that I've heard.
Yeah.
How did that collaboration come about? How did you meet these guys?
So I met them. Oh, you know what? Okay, I had to remember. I actually met them at a conference, a folk conference, like that's regional. So it's called NERFA, New England, New England Region. Oh shoot, I already forgot what it stands for. Anyways, it's a Northeast folk conference. I actually met them there, and they were like, "Oh, you're from Rochester?" And I was like, "Well, I actually just moved to Rochester." So anyway, so they're like the first people that I met. And I went to one of their benefit shows and I got to know them a little bit more. And then they've had me on a couple of their shows, and I just love them. Like I love their music. I love the people that they are. They're just so nice. And I write all kinds of music. And this song that I wrote, I just felt like, I had performed it a little bit on the piano, but I'm like, I really want this to be different. And I could sort of see the Brothers Blue like backing me up, like an old time string band. Like I feel like that would work. So we just like got together and tried it out, and I loved it. And I was like, oh, let's do like more. Because I just had so much fun doing it. And so that's basically what happened.
Now where was that video shot?
That was at the Daily Refresher.
Oh.
Yeah, the upstairs,
Okay.
the upstairs of the Daily
Yeah.
Refresher. Yep.
I have not been there since it turned into the Daily Refresher, shamefully. I used to play there when it was called the Blue Room. This was many
Oh.
years ago. I think maybe it was something else, and it's always been a really cool spot. But yeah, in the video, I never would have guessed that's where it was. Very cool.
Yeah.
The song's great. I love it.
Thank you.
I mean, what's your inspiration behind it? I mean, you're talking about the Rockies and
Yeah.
being out west.
Yeah. So, well, basically, I wrote this song like a year ago because I was really struggling, like about stuff I do all the time. It's a normal state of mind for me. And I felt the need to write a song around it. And then I kind of like, I just started thinking about different times in my life, particularly about between like 10 and 12 years ago. I did a lot of traveling. I actually spent a year living in a van with a bunch of friends, and we traveled the whole country. And there was this one moment where we tried to see the Grand Canyon on our way somewhere, and by the time we got there, it was dark. Like, so I actually, like, I've been to the Grand Canyon, but I've literally never seen it. But in that moment, it felt, I could feel it. It was weird. It was like, I felt I was in the presence of something huge. So I kind of thought about like how comforting that feeling is to feel small. And so that was the starting point of the song about how it is to feel small. And actually that's like a really comforting thing, because then your problems can only be like as big as you are. So if you're small, then maybe your problems aren't like that big either. Yeah.
Interesting. I love it. So what direction would you like to take your career in the next 5 years? I mean, what's your goal? I mean, you're a mother, right? So there's little bits of confinement there, but not really. Okay. So, I mean, do you see yourself doing more touring? I mean, you're obviously actively writing. I mean, do you have any plans for an upcoming release?
Yeah. So I guess, okay, so I did a lot of touring last year. Not as much as I necessarily would have liked to, but more than I ever have before. And that kind of made me realize that like I need to make some adjustments, and I need like a time period to sort of make those adjustments, like financial adjustments, if we're getting down to brass tacks. So my goal right now is actually to like get myself in a financial situation where I can tour. Like my ideal would be to tour like 50% of the year. And as you said, yeah, like it's a little tricky with kids, but I mean, men do it all the time. So, and I think, yeah. And I think for me, and this is going back to the financials, like I want to make sure though, that when I'm home, I'm like, I'm fully there with my kids, and I'm not like working when I'm home. So I think that was kind of the thing that I realized was like off balance. But yeah, like I think of myself primarily as a songwriter and a composer. So I think like that coupled with doing more work for media, and also I would love to have my songs played by other people, actually, is like a really big goal of mine. So yeah, I'm still kind of figuring out how exactly I'm gonna get there, but I think right now, you know, I am focusing primarily on just like writing music for myself to perform. And I have a lot of songs I haven't yet recorded. So I definitely have like 2 or 3 albums worth of stuff. And I'm sort of trying to pace myself though. I'm kind of forcing myself to like wait a little bit and make sure that it's a good time, because I don't want to just release it and then it's just, oh, but it's not the right timing for me to like really put myself behind that album and, you know, go far with it. But so yeah, right now I'm kind of like just releasing singles and making it sort of lower key and trying new stuff out and that kind of thing. But that's my bigger goal, 5 years. Yeah.
I hear you. Awesome. Sarah, it's so nice to actually meet you somewhat face to face. I mean, we've been conversing a lot here and there online, but yeah, it's a pleasure to get to know you more. And when this all subsides, maybe we should get together for a play date. You know?
I was just
and piano music. Yeah.
Yeah.
We could write music and let the kids go crazy. All right. Yes. How about that?
I would. Yeah. How old is your son?
He's going to be 4 in June.
Perfect. My daughter's 4.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
great.
yeah.
Perfect play date.
Yeah. Yeah. He loves his girls. So he is.
Awesome.
He's a little playboy these days. But such cool. A pleasure to meet you. Thank you for being on the show. And you guys hang tight, because we're going to hear another original song from Miss Sarah Eide. And in the meantime, I'm going to welcome my good friend, Mr. Dan Gross. Dan.
Howdy. Not much,
Great
girl.
To see you.
You as well. Thanks for having me on. It was really cool hearing Sarah play, share a little bit about herself. I can double everything she said about the Brothers Blue. They are 3 of the most genuine dudes I've ever had the pleasure of meeting. I actually MC the same fundraising event that Sarah was mentioning. The idea of a folk artist conference is still a little bit funny to me, but it's cool that they met that way. Those guys are a really cool part of our scene, and I enjoyed the video as well.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, that was the first I've heard of them, was seeing Sarah's videos. So, I mean, they obviously very gifted and talented. I hope to see more of them around our scene. So, Dan, I mean, how's it feel to have the tables turned on you for once? You're always out there. You're so busy. I mean, how do you even manage a life for yourself outside of your work? I mean, you're in the news, you're on the radio, I mean, out there at the bop shop, you know, hosting your own type of events. I mean, what do you do outside of music and journalism that's like for Dan fun, you know?
I'll go through this part by part here. It feels pretty good to be on the other side of it. I think one thing that you do get an appreciation for as an interviewer is also what it's like being interviewed. I think the more that you do of one, the easier the other becomes. So I think there's a nice balance between those two. It actually took, I mean, I already knew, but it took this situation where I'm working from home and all of the other things you mentioned are canceled. Being on the radio, Jazz 90.1, we're doing all basically remote broadcasting now for the most part, and my show as well. Bop Shop's not doing shows. Three Heads isn't doing shows. I'm not doing the Rochester Indie Musician Spotlight. So I mean, you asked how I balance it. Well, previous to maybe a month ago since this started, it was not balanced. It was a crazy way to live. Every day was just like, wow, I gotta slug my way through this and get through it. In a way, it's been good for me. It's a chance to reset a little bit, catch up on all of the Bop Shop shows. They're finally all caught up, which that feels very good that they're caught up. We're just waiting for some artist interviews on there. Really, the main thing is, like, you and I have talked about this before. There's the craft element. I really enjoy the actual craft of doing all these things, but I also enjoy working with people, being able to talk to people, work with the really interesting people we have here in Rochester. So I think that helps me quite a lot in terms of how I can keep going throughout this whole thing and keep myself motivated to make sure I can do most of these things on time.
I imagine you being a pretty organized person. I mean, in order to keep all this in check and to keep so active. I mean, would you agree with that statement, or
it kind of comes
are you organized in some ways and not others? Like,
yeah. So I think in anything there's balance, right? I will be the first to admit that I'm not as organized about doing my household chores. I am comically bad at checking my paper mail, which is really not one of my strongest habits. But, you know, the unorganization comes out in different ways, because I think if we were all perfectly organized all the time, we'd all feel very restrained. When it comes to work, I think ironically having a very busy schedule helps, because you only have a certain amount of time to do things. So if I get home from being a reporter at Channel 8, I have so much time to make dinner and do some work before I crash. And that stuff helps. And like anything else, it's a formula. And the more you do the formula, the more it's easy for you to get things done. I mean, I know when I started at anything, it takes you a lot longer to do it, you know, and I'll just use mixing music as an example. When you started, it takes a really long time. You're figuring out what compression is, what all the knobs are. You're figuring out what amount of reverb sounds great, what doesn't, what EQ works on some instruments, what it doesn't on others. And then once you build up these sort of heuristic patterns in your brain, you can just do it faster. Like now I know, okay, well, if I'm doing vocals, I want the threshold to be at this point, and then the compression ratio to be at another point. That kind of stuff helps. So I am organized in terms of work, but you know, the more that you do something, the less you have to think about it, and the more it just becomes your car that you put your key in and it starts.
Sure. I imagine you being kind of like me. Like I do better by keeping busy. If I am not busy, I feel like I just lose my mind. But I mean, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, what fueled your passion for journalism? And I mean, I know you're a musician as well. You play bass.
Yep. So I will pretend that I can play bass. So my history is a little interesting in terms of journalism. I actually went to broadcasting school at SUNY Oswego thinking that I would be a sports broadcasting major. I played football.
Very different. Yeah.
Very, very different. I played football all throughout high school. I really enjoyed the X's and O's of it, how, I enjoyed that part of it. And I thought, okay, well, I have a face for the radio, so let me try being a sports broadcaster. I took one sports broadcasting class and realized that probably was not for me. And I realized that because at the time I was really exploring playing music more. I grew up in a very, neither of my parents are musicians, but my dad really grew up with a strong listening appreciation. I always grew up with classical, opera, jazz in the house. So I really had a refined cultural sense of what culture music was. I'm not saying rock and roll isn't, but that's where my background is. So I really had an appreciation for that stuff, and I played trombone throughout high school. I picked up upright bass because jamming in a band with a tuba isn't nearly as fun as a bass. So I picked up upright bass, and then I actually got 2 degrees in broadcasting and music. And as I was finishing up my music degree, I thought, well, okay, I always wanted to write, but I always knew that I was never going to be the level of bass player that I really wanted to be. And I could name however many reasons, but that was just something I knew about myself. So I thought, how can I translate the passion that I have and use that to, well, spotlight what other great musicians are doing? So I thought I would really be a music journalist, someone who writes about music. I freelanced with the DNC for a handful of years. Then I started, being a radio host on Jazz 90.1. So that's really where it came from. I think you'll hear the similar story about anyone who's a journalism in a specialty field, right? Like I think people who write about science in science journals, who aren't scientists themselves, but science journalists, will say the same thing, that they know, okay, well, my genius level or whatever is not quite at the threshold, but I am really good at writing, and I am really good at showing off what other people do well. And I think that's where my passion is. We can just keep using the Brothers Blues as an example. I mean, they just do incredible, down-to-earth folk music that sounds like where we're from, and they do it in such a masterful and genuine way. I want more people to experience the same joy that I get when I hear them, and I'm fortunate that I have a platform that I'm able to do that, and that's really where the passion comes from. It's not. I mean, I do love writing, I do love video editing, I do love the mixing part, but I wouldn't be able to do those technical procedural things if I didn't really care about showcasing what other great musicians are doing.
So do you feel that like your work in, I mean, I feel like radio and television are pretty different. They obviously bear their differences. Do you feel that doing each of those kind of helps you become better and stronger at all your other endeavors, or stronger as, I mean, which one actually are you more passionate about? Would you say, do you enjoy doing one more than the other? Sorry, I just threw 8 questions at you at once. But
don't sweat it. I'll do my best to unpack.
All right.
In terms of which one I like better, well, I can wrap this up into one analogy, right? I mean, if we're thinking about a musician who plays, well, upright bass, you can have someone who is a really great upright bass player for folk music. Someone who really slap bass, gets the idiom, and really understands that well. Then you might have someone who is a really great classical player. Someone who plays with a bow, knows all the really technical stuff. They play at a really high technical level, play really complicated music. Now that doesn't mean that those two can't cross over. But the analogy is it's the same instrument, but you're using it in a different way. And if we're talking about broadcasting and communication skills, it's kind of the same thing. The instrument, we can say, however, is my voice, my presentation, how I approach things. So I can't really say that I'm more passionate about one than the other, but I'm very fortunate that I can have both, because being on the radio, especially how we do it at Jazz 90.1, where half of the set list is basically whatever we want, as long as it's jazz, obviously. But we go into our library, which has thousands and thousands of CDs. We can play whatever we want from there. And as long as half our set list has new music, we can do whatever. And I appreciate that sort of, it's a little bit more relaxed in terms of what I want to do. I can do a whole show based on great trombone players or all tunes written by Cole Porter. And then when the mic is on and I'm talking into the radio, it's a much more relaxed way of talking because I don't have to like stand up straight. I don't have to comb my hair, you know? And so it's much more relaxed. And I enjoy having that something that where I can turn the left brain off more and turn the right emotional brain on stuff too. In terms of TV, that is a couple things. Like I really enjoy writing for web, like the web articles. That's mainly what I do. But then formatting something for TV, it's very rigid because you only have a certain amount of time to tell the story, and there's certain formatting that works. Like the anchor has to start talking, and then I have to start talking, and then the person I interviewed has to talk, and then I talk again. And so I really appreciate that strict formatting because it challenges my brain to say, okay, I have all of this stuff. How do I format this really well into a preset formula for me? So to recap, I can't say that I prefer one over the other. I'm passionate about both, but they scratch different itches. And I'm fortunate that I am able to do both because that's how I'd be able to do it if it didn't scratch different itches, or else I would just be tired of broadcasting and I'd quit one or the other because it'd just be too much of the same thing. So the fact that I have both is pretty rewarding. And I think, to answer the final part of this, I think being on radio, developing a good radio voice, like how I would talk on radio, is a little bit different than how I would talk in person. That helps. Being on TV helps. I mean, they help each other, even though it's a different instrument and same instrument, different disciplines. They do inform each other, and so, yeah, that's what I get from that stuff.
So we're talking about transformation today. That's our show theme. I mean, where would you like to take your career? I mean, we're at a down point, right? Yeah. Everybody is on the same page for once, you know, and are you taking this time to think and plan your goals? I mean, is there something, an itch that you haven't scratched yet that you're looking to, get the back scratcher out on and nail it out?
Yeah. That's interesting. I think so. Us being all in it together, that makes being a reporter interesting in this regard, because pretty much every story seems to be the same. Is how has this crisis affected someone? Which, on the one hand, forces you to be creative. I've talked to people I never thought I would talk to, just because they just normally wouldn't be in the news world at all. Yeah, so that part's been interesting. As I kind of alluded to before, ironically, this has been the closest thing to a vacation I've gotten in literally years, because so much of my workload is just gone. And I can, and not only is my outside of work gone, but what I do for News 8 has been streamlined. Typically in a day for News 8, I'd have to set up a story, go out, interview the person, film all the B-roll, come back, edit it for the website, edit it for TV, write it for TV, write it for the website, go on TV, talk about it, and then finish up the web story. 90% of that is gone, and I just email someone saying, hey, can you Zoom at 1:30? You do the Zoom, it's 15 minutes, and you have everything you need to write your story. So it's been really streamlined. So that's how it's affected my job right now. In terms of what I want to do in 5 years, I've always talked about doing the Rochester Indie Musician Spotlight full time would be really cool. I do think that has changed. I think part of my brain never thought I'd actually be able to be a reporter. So that's like, oh, well, if I can't be a reporter, then I'll just do this goofy thing full time. So that's been part of it. I liked how you asked that. An itch I haven't scratched yet. I don't know if I'd want to do it forever, but I think it'd be really cool to have the opportunity to anchor a show on News 8 and do that Monday through Friday and have that be my focus. And I can't say if I would want to do it for forever because I haven't done it yet, but that's always something that I thought would be cool to do. Something, and that, I mean, that's certainly a challenge, right? I mean, you're doing the same show, which has the same formatting, but you have to find cool and different ways to do it. So I think if we're looking at 5-year plan, if I could, I'm still doing the Rochester Indie Musician Spotlight best I can. It's taken obviously a bit of a break with this whole situation. But I'd like to do that more, or find a bigger or more streamlined way to do it. And I'd love to anchor a daily show on News 8. That'd be pretty cool. I don't know how far away I am from either, but those are both things I'd love to try.
I don't think you're that far away at all. I mean,
Oh,
I've seen you
shucks.
grow in the past 5 years, and I'm really proud
Thanks.
of you. Thank you for all that you do for our scene and for highlighting our, amazing musicians and, the people that deserve that recognition. So thank you for what you do, and, continue to soar. Dan, where could we find? Could you tell everybody your website if they want to explore more about you?
Absolutely. It's a little more spread out than I would like. I have not been the best about consolidating everything. Um, my website is dan-gross.com. The guy who took dangrossmusic.com composes music for the show Drunk History. So I guess it's pretty fair that that guy had Dan Gross music and not me. I'm completely fine with that. So that's one place. That's one place to check it out. The other place I would say is my Facebook page. I'm pretty good about updating Jazz 90.1 and Rochester indie musician spotlight stuff on there. And as you alluded to, that's Dan Gross Music and Journalism. And if you want to check out what I'm doing on News 8, I hopefully have a link for that on my website. If I don't, just Google Rochester First, all one word, space Dan Gross, and you can see everything I've ever written for Channel 8.
Dan Gross, you rock. I mean that. Speaking of people who rock, let's bring Sarah Eide back to sing us one last song before we close out our show. Sarah, you have a song called Shadow. That's about your children, right? And ironically, it kind of, you were saying, kind of joking around about the times that we're in, that you feel like your shadows are really in full force, huh?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Just checking. So I wrote the song about how my son at the time, he was just like copying things and seeing things that we didn't want him to see, just like following us around. And yes, I think that actually the song is even more fitting for today since I'm with my kids 24/7, literally all the time.
Girl, I feel ya. All right. We'll take it away. Can't wait to hear it.
Okay. Yep. This is Shadow. I can't shake you, my shadow. No, I can't shake you. You're following me everywhere, seeing every little thing I do. Oh, I can't shake you, my shadow. No, I can't shake you. You keep me on my toes, making me follow through. Darling, you're inclined to be just one step behind me, never minding my pleas to turn the other way. Oh, I don't want you to see the rougher parts of me. I don't want to have to worry about what's on display. Oh, I can't shake you, my shadow. No, I can't shake you. You keep me on my toes and make me follow through. Oh, I can't shake you, my shadow. No, I can't shake you. You keep me on my toes and you make me follow through. My tiny silhouette, you won't let me forget the ways I affect you. You mimic my flaws. Seeing the things about myself I detest is getting hard to digest. It got me feeling depressed. Oh, I can't shake you, my shadow. No, I can't shake you. You're following me everywhere and seeing every little thing I do. Oh, I can't shake you, my shadow. No, I can't shake you. You keep me on my toes and you make me follow through. Hey. I can't shake you, my shadow. No, I can't shake you. You're following me everywhere and seeing every little thing I do. Oh, I can't shake you, my shadow. No, I can't shake you. You keep me on my toes, and you're making me follow through. Oh, I can't shake you, my shadow. No, I can't shake you. You're following me everywhere and seeing every little thing I do. Oh, I can't shake you, my shadow. No, I can't shake you. You keep me on my toes, make me follow through. Following me everywhere, seeing every little thing I do. Ooh, keep me on my toes, and you're making me follow through.
Sarah, so brilliant. Thank you so much for performing on the show. I love your piano playing. I love your style. So cool.
Thank
Great
you.
song.
Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh, my pleasure. So saraheide.com is your website, correct? And
Yes.
make sure you check out Dan's website as well. Thank you to the two of you. Big thank you to Boya Productions. And before we end this show, I'm going to leave you off with a closeout statement. Today I posted one of my favorite quotes. This quote has stuck with me for many years. Just when a caterpillar thought the world was over, it became a butterfly. Metamorphosis is inevitable. Our lives become more complex on a multitude of levels as we undergo changes mentally, physically, culturally, environmentally, and politically. Change ensures growth. We have to shed the old before we can come into the new. Historically, in this very moment, we are witnessing change. Cause and effect has us technologically advancing worldwide as the ongoing pandemic has forced us into new ways of thinking and performing in order to carry on and maintain some kind of normalcy during these times of separation. Our lives are transforming before our eyes. Darkness won't be the darkness once you shine the light of your consciousness upon it. Each of us transforms through multiple stages in our life. It is only through exertion that we emerge into who we will become next. A turning point is a critical time in your life where big decisions could lead to big change, both in your career and in life. Turning points are an opportunity to recalibrate, reassess your direction and the path you'd like to pave forward. They are a major contributor to one's transformation. So, design a plan, set a goal, see the transformation, be the transformation. Who, what, and where? Who do you want to become? What will it take for you to achieve your goals? Where do you want to take your life and career? What does the next chapter and phase look like for you? What is the life lesson in all of this for you? May this be your butterfly moment. Thank you so much, you guys, for tuning in. Have an amazing weekend. We'll be returning here at Afternoon Cocktail on Monday, and I have some really extraordinary guests there as well. So you guys have a great weekend. Take care of yourselves. Be good to yourselves, and I will see you soon. Thank you.